Boa tarde, galera. Tudo bem? Me chamo Donna Weber. É prazer estar aqui com vocês hoje, neste lugar belíssimo. Como dizem por aqui, o melhor sempre pro final. So, thank you, obrigado, for staying to the end today. And I know you've been listening a lot, so I want you to be engaged. I want you to share what you know with me and with each other, okay? So is that the deal? You're gonna stay and share, okay? So you ready for audience participation? All right. All right. So imagine you're staying in this bungalow, a luxurious bungalow perched over the clear azure warm waters. Maybe in Tahiti, maybe here in Brazil. You're snorkeling, you're stand-up paddleboarding, the cool breezes clear all the cares and worries from your mind. And during the day, you're enjoying walks on the beach and massages. At night, you have moonlit dinners on the beach. How might you feel if you spent a few days here, if you spent a week here? Now, what if this was your reality? A rundown hotel in the rain. And some actual quotes from TripAdvisor are that the staff was rude and incompetent, the food was horrible, the drinks were weak, there were bird droppings on the deck. How might it feel when you envisioned, you anticipated, you expected that bungalow overlooking the water, and here's where you end up? Has anyone ever had that anticipation and then the reality? Well, this is what we're here to address today, the value gap, the difference between what is promised to your customers and the reality that they receive. So your customers buy a dream, but too often they wake up to delayed value, they wake up to frustrations, they wake up to complex solutions. And if your company is serious about growth, then it's time to get serious about closing the value gap. And there's been studies that show that companies think they're delivering a great customer experience, but 70% of customers for B2B businesses say that they're not receiving a great experience. And in the US alone, this is costing companies over $70 billion a year. So why do we have this value gap? We have siloed teams, we have fragmented systems, we have disjointed data and metrics, we have manual follow-ups, people missing out, they have missed opportunities, and the leaderships are missing key insights. And that's because people aren't working together and teams aren't working together. So actually, I want to go back here. So raise your hand. Do any of you have that experience of systems that don't connect, teams that don't collaborate? It's all too common of a problem. Okay, so here's a quote. So I have some key quotes in English and Portuguese. High growth companies lose revenue and customers because they don't reliably deliver the value promised in the sales cycle. So we're going to address that here today, and it's more important than ever now in this age of AI. Okay, so this is what we're covering. We're going to talk about the gap and start with why do we have this gap. Then we'll talk about delivering initial value, then lifetime value, and then how to deliver value at scale. And I've summed up each of these areas in a recap slide, so if you'd like to take photos, that would be a great slide to take a photo of. And just a bit about me, as Ronaldo was sharing, I wrote the book, Onboarding Orquestrado, and it's for sale out in the area. This is just a handful of companies that I've worked with over the years. And I'm based in California, in San Francisco Bay Area, and this is what I like to do when I'm not helping companies keep their customers. This is me kayaking on the American River in California, and it's a rapid called Troublemaker. Have any of you been whitewater rafting or kayaking? And I've also kayaked in Ecuador this last March, and in Chile, in Pucón, I've kayaked there twice. Okay, so let's dive into this value gap. All right, so imagine, we're going to go back to the imagining. What if your company kept every customer you ever acquired? What would that mean for your company? How many customers might you have right now? How much expansion, renewals, how much growth might your company have right now? And if you get commissions from customers, how much might you be worth right now? How many additional commissions for renewals and expansions might you be getting? And what might that mean for your customers' success if every customer was thriving as a result of using your product? So just think about it for a moment. What might that feel like? And the reality is, every time you sell to a new customer, there's an opportunity to make 3 more sales. That's right, you get not just the initial sale, but you can also get an expansion sale, the renewal sale, and a referral sale. So let's look at how that works. So this is the customer success bow tie, and on the left is the buyer journey, and that's like the sales funnel flipped on its side. And if you're familiar with the sales funnel, you start with multitudes of prospects and leads. You qualify them, you deliver the right content to the right persona at the right time, and you close a deal, right? And you start with many and you close down. And then you begin the customer journey. You'll notice between the two sides there's a little gap, and that's the value gap. Because if you acquire a customer and then you successfully onboard them, and then they start adopting your product and they start thriving on your product, then they become your champions and they refer you to other companies, then you have this huge expansion that builds out on the right side. And the reality is that in a subscription business, 60 to 80%, the last metric I just read last week was 73%, which is like the average, is that 60 to 80% of a company's revenue is coming from existing customers. And I was talking with VJ earlier today. We were saying that retention is the new expansion because there's just unbelievable growth here, unbelievable revenue when you keep your customers. And so you can see that in this image, you have your compounding revenue. When your customers stay with you, they don't just pay you once. That's the beauty with subscription, right? And that's why so many companies move to SaaS. They don't just pay you once, they pay you over and over and over again, so that revenue keeps compounding as you acquire new customers. And you can see there's a little green topping. That's like the icing on the revenue cake. So those new customer acquisitions are great, and they can be really important in the early days, but if you don't keep your customers, your company's actually losing money. And I run the numbers with companies all the time, and what I see is what the cost to acquire a customer, the cost to onboard a customer and enable a customer. They're actually losing money if that customer does not renew. If that customer churns, they lose money. And my husband has a saying, when you buy stock, it's like buying high and selling low and trying to make it up in volume. So your company starts running and trying to get new customers. Anyone have that investment strategy? So I created the orchestrated onboarding framework, and I'm not going to go into this today because I detail it in my book, but it's all about not just going live with your product, but it's about creating, trusting, and enduring relationships with your customers that deliver meaningful value so they stick around and buy more and tell everyone they know and become a loyal champion. Okay, and when I do this with companies all around the world, this is what kind of results that they see. Higher product usage, higher net revenue retention, lower onboarding costs, lower support costs. Okay, so here's just my recap slide if you want to take a photo. The gaps are the dream versus the reality, the siloed systems and teams. The bridge is creating a journey, a journey from the buyer journey to the customer journey. Create that bridge. Some key metrics are churn. You know, a lot of companies measure churn, but you need to know when churn is happening. If you get churn in that first year, it's because they are failing to launch, and I'll dive more into that. And let's see, also the NRR, and a key tool, of course, is a CRM, because that's where you're managing your customer relationships. Okay, we're going to dive into the beginning of the journey, which is initial value. Now, this is a gold nugget, and where I go kayaking in California is where gold was first discovered, and that's where the gold rush of 1849 started. And maybe during my lunch break while I'm kayaking, I might find a gold nugget. And I can examine it, I could, show you, we can count the number of, crevices there are, the different angles, how much it weighs. But if I just have a gold nugget in my hand, or if I put it on my shelf, does it actually have any meaning? Does it actually have any value? No. The value only comes when I melt the gold down, and I turn it into coins, gold bars, jewelry. That's when the nugget has values. When I just talk about the features and the functions of the nugget, it's meaningless. And in the same way, as great as your product is, if you talk about your product features and functions, the reality is your customers don't care about it. They need to know what's meaningful to them. And the reality is that it's not just meaning to the company. You got a company, it's an account, it's a logo, but you need to deliver value to every user in that company who's using your product, whether they're working in the factory, whether they're working in the field, maybe they work in the oil field or the football field, right? Maybe they're the CEO of a small family business or the Fortune 50 business. Whoever they are, most people are looking for tools and systems because they want to make more money, they want to save money, they want to save time, or they need to be compliant. It's really quite simple. So if you're not helping your customers and all their users be heroes with your solution, then you're missing the point. You're not delivering value. So what happens is your customers fall into the trough of disillusionment. And this comes from the Gartner hype cycle, which is when there's a new product coming out, people get really excited, and then the excitement declines, and then you kind of build that back up. So this is what happens during the buyer journey. Your sales reps are great at building this excitement, at building the dream, right? Making the promises, and customers get really excited. But then they fall into this trough of disillusionment because, especially in business-to-business software, the implementations take a long time. There's APIs, there's integrations, there's migrations, the data's a mess. And most of the companies I work with, onboarding takes 60 days, 90 days, 120 days. How long does your product take? 1 month, 6 months, 12 months? It's a long time, so people get frustrated. And one company I worked with, that's a marketing platform for real estate agents, and they were finding customers were pausing and canceling their licenses because they were so frustrated. And so they were losing like $500,000 a year because of this. And customers are most excited to be successful with your product at the very beginning. Who wants to wait? We're in the age of instant gratification, and no matter how complex your business solution might be, the business users are looking more and more for consumer-type experiences. We order a pizza, we can track how long it's going to take, we can track when it's arriving. That's the kind of experiences we're wanting right now. So we need to really explore how to deliver some immediate value, some immediate success. And as we're in the age of AI and consumption pricing, does anyone here do consumption pricing for your products? We're moving more and more into a consumption model, and you can't wait around to deliver value because people are going to be testing out, trying out. I mean, maybe you've tried ChatGPT, you've tried Claude, you've tried Gemini, right? But if you're not getting immediate value, you're going to move on. So the value needs to be delivered much more quickly than ever before. Okay, so we look at first value, which is the moment when customers first realize that that they're benefiting from your solution. Some people call it the aha moment or the magic moment. So raise your hand if you have defined first value at your company. Okay, great. I'm seeing more and more companies have defined first value. And have you defined the time it takes to get to first value? So it'd be good to know how long it gets there and then explore ways to reduce the time. All right? So let's look at the benefits of quick wins. So anytime we hit a win or a reward in our brains release a feel-good chemical called endorphin. So that lights up the brain, and people are going to want to engage with you and your company more. So the more you can help them celebrate as quickly as possible, then guess what? They're going to show up for meetings. They're not going to avoid you. They're going to be more accountable because they see that there's a benefit from attending, working with you. Just like, do any of you go running and you get that runner's high? And even though, like, maybe the run is kind of miserable, but afterwards you feel great. So that's what we want. We want our customers to get that excitement so they want to keep running and staying engaged. So what happens is they get that endorphin hit. Customers are more engaged. They don't fall into that trough that we're talking about. And also, when they have wins, then they look good. They can share that with the stakeholders or buyers, and they look good internally as well. And that's going to help to reduce churn and increase retention and revenue. And with quick wins, we want to do those in weeks or days, not months. And the thing is, in the world of agile software development, how long does it take your product to be released? Do you have release cycles every 2 weeks? Raise your hand if it's every 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks. So products are coming out much more quickly, but we're waiting for these like monolithic deployments. So we want to look at how can you deliver some value even before your product goes live. So for example, this company, this marketing platform for real estate agents, rather than waiting for the platform to go live, we had these customer success managers engage in week 1, provide the customers access to exclusive community, content, and strategic coaching. So they weren't just waiting around going, well, what have I bought? Why isn't anyone talking to me? And now they're off and running the minute they can log into the solution. So that's an example. Other companies I've worked with, let's say during a kickoff meeting, they'll have a first job description posted or maybe a first workflow. So there's things you can do with your product even before it's fully live. Okay. Here's a quote from my book. The main reason your customers leave in the first year is because they never get value from the product in the first place. They fail to launch. So something I encourage you to do over the next week is not to know just what your churn is, but when does it happen? If it's happening before they renew, then you have to deliver value more quickly. Okay, we're gonna do like a 4-minute conversation here, and I'm gonna time it, and you must, when I say time, you must come back, okay? So I want you to talk to someone next to you. Have you defined first value? And if you have, talk about what it is. And if you haven't, this is a great chance to think of some ideas and talk about how long it takes to reach first value. So I'm going to time you. We're going to do 4 minutes, 2 minutes each. Okay? Ready? Go. Okay, switch over so the other person is talking. Switch over so that the other person has a minute to share. Did you both share? Yeah? Okay, let's resume. I hope you got some good ideas. Okay, so here's the recap for the initial value. You have your gaps. We talked about the trough of disillusionment. How many of you, raise your hand if you cannot recognize revenue until your product goes live? Can you recognize revenue? Right, so you have to, the faster you get your product live, the faster you can recognize revenue. I worked with a company where we helped them reduce the onboarding and implementation by 4 weeks so they can recognize an additional month of revenue a year. That was for them, it was like $500,000. So you need to look at the bridge as quick wins. If you have a time to first value, if you don't have that, start measuring it and see how you can reduce it. And then CRMs and onboarding systems are really critical. Okay, next up is lifetime value. So you've delivered some initial value, now what? Now I've heard some people calling this the value cliff, where you pour all this love and care on your new customers, and then you kind of go, see ya, and they get whiplash going, like, where'd you go? I thought you loved me. Does anyone have that experience? The value cliff? Yeah. So then, you need to look at how you're gonna deliver value across the journey. Raise your hand if you have a land and expand strategy at your company. Land and expand. A lot of companies have a land and expand strategy, but they just kind of hope customers expand. All they do is land them, and they don't do anything to expand them. So let's dive into this. So we talked about that trough of disillusionment. Instead, we can build a value journey. So this is, you see, there's no trough to fall into here. So rather than pushing for an all-encompassing go live, you deliver some key milestones, and then you keep going. And you start simple, and then you build momentum. Now, I worked with a company, they have a big data platform. It's ETL, extract, transform, and load. And in the UK, called Matillion. And they kind of called we're done with onboarding when we go live with the customer's data. And I'm like, when we go into production with the data, like, how much data is there? It was taking 6 to 12 months. And so what we did, we got to some initial value in 6 weeks, and we could say onboarding is done in 6 weeks when we broke it down to the first use case or the first data set. We could tick the box, onboarding is done. And now they can deliver the next use case, the next data set, and they keep going. So it's more agile and iterative rather than monolithic. And that's creating a value journey. So we really want to not just go live with our products, we want to deliver transformation. That's what we want. We don't just want people using our product, we want transformation. I like to use gym analogies. I like to go to the gym. And I don't go because I just want to check a box. I want to go because I'm going to feel better and look better, right? So we want to help people start with something simple, crawl, and then run, then walk, then run, and then ideally fly. And I call that like a maturity journey where you go deeper and broader into the solution. And, when we look at, for example, Zoho, Zoho has a CRM, but they have nearly 60 products, and there's so much that they can do to help their customers thrive. And that's what we're really looking to do. So if you deliver value once, then you win a deal. But when you deliver value for life, then you build a thriving business for your customers and for your company. So here's the recap for the lifetime value. Whoops. Thank you. You need to look for this value cliff when customers are disengaged, they don't know what happened to them. You have these long monolithic deployments, and then you build a value journey and transformation where you deliver the right content to the right user at the right time, and that's the bridge. And then product usage, product adoption, active users, those are some of the key metrics there. NRR, business outcomes, CRM is key as well. Okay, next up is value at scale. So we can do all this great stuff, but if it's costing you more for your company than what your customers are paying you, then that doesn't solve any problems. So we need to look at scaling. And scaling is the ability to grow your business faster than your expenses. So what happens is, I work with companies where they're small and they are treating every customer like a special snowflake. And I know you don't get much snow here in Brazil, so I heard that you might say it's like the last cookie in the package. So what happens is you pour all this love and care on customers, and it feels good for a time. Your customers love you, you feel good, but then as your company grows, it's exhausting. You can't do it anymore. Somebody just talked to me today and said all of their customers are, key accounts. You can't do that, and they have 3 people managing all these customers. And then as you get on more and more customers, the only way to continue that is by adding more and more people to your team, and your CFO probably won't approve that, and it'll be too expensive, right? So you need to look at if you're handling all your customers with special care. And I'm amazed when I work with companies, I look at how much it's costing them to onboard, implement, enable their customers, and they're often spending more than what customers are spending with them. So it's not sustainable. So raise your hand if you're suffering from the special snowflake syndrome at your company, or you're the last cookie in the bag. Okay, then there's siloed systems and teams. Anyone having siloed systems and teams? I worked with a multi-billion-dollar company, and I did an assessment, and it was just amazing that how siloed they were. Every team had different systems and didn't talk to any other system. Every team was being kind of measured by internal priorities that had nothing to do with what any other teams were doing, and nobody was doing anything that had anything to do with the customer. And the friction that to work with this company, for me as a consultant, internally for the employees and externally for the customers, was huge. And so this is a huge thing. We could apply AI all day, but if you don't address the inefficiencies from siloed systems and teams, that is dramatically slowing down your growth. It must be addressed. So this is a great book, if you want to, it is in English. It's called What a Unicorn Knows by Matt May and Pablo Dominguez. And they talk about friction. And the quote here is, unnecessary friction stems from an inward, self-centered view of the business, organized around its own ideas and interests. You must center your business and every team around customer-centered value. So this company that I was working with, they're bringing teams together. They're crossing that chasm from the value promised to the value delivered. This one product I was working with them on, the sales reps didn't know how to sell it. The marketing team didn't know how to market it. The customer success and implementation teams didn't know how to do anything with it. And so the churn was extremely high. So it's all about educating internal teams and then getting them to work together. So let's start exploring how to scale. So there's 4 key ways to scale here. And the first is the 80-20 rule. So rather than every customer being a special snowflake, is start understanding what is not rather what's unique about each customer, but about what's the same. And creating a foundational journey that you can take all the customers along. And sure, there's always going to be some exceptions, but let those be the outliers, not, every customer is an exception, right? So start creating that 80, are you familiar with the 80-20 rule? Like what can you do it's kind of like taking your customers down the highway rather than showing them every meandering path. The next is the ideal customer or client profile. I worked with a company that does health tech company, and what we found was they were selling to anybody. At the end of every quarter, the sales teams were making their goals, they were celebrating. The implementation teams were pulling out their hair because they couldn't get these customers implemented. The implementation teams it was taking longer and longer. And the irony, they were trying just to close the deals, but because there were all these poor fit customers, they had to keep bringing the sales rep and the buyer back in and the legal team back in because they set such high promises that could never be delivered. So part of our work together was we defined an ideal client profile, and you have to be really kind of disciplined around selling to that. But the implementations dropped by 20%, retention increased, and the implementation teams kept their hair. Then, of course, there's AI and digital touch, because you can't keep every customer as a special snowflake. You need to start exploring a one-to-many approach. So we'll dive more into this in a moment. And then there's customer enablement, and this is a great one-to-many approach. I was working with this one company where the customer success managers were onboarding and enabling every new customer. And then this is a marketing platform. And all of their existing customers were like, oh, can you just help me with this next campaign? Oh, I have a new team member. Can you show them how to do it? And I started working with them, and the exhaustion and burnout was palpable through the Zoom screen. And so what we did together was we built out a self-paced academy so that people in the customers could learn the foundations on their own, and then the customer success managers could be strategic advisors for what's unique to each account, not going over the same basics over and over. And that helps the customers, but it also helps your teams, because then they're not so exhausted and they're feeling more valued and challenged. I mean, I don't know about you, but I don't like to say the same thing over and over, right? Okay, so here are some ways to deliver a one-to-many solution. I was talking to one professional just this week. They were saying, the smaller customers, they want a lot of love and care, but they don't touch them because they're so lower price. And I said, well, what about creating a cohort, and you can onboard a whole cohort of customers at a time? You could do academies, self-paced. You can do in-product guidance. You can do in-product chat. I worked with one company, they're a big data solution in San Francisco, and they have a tech touch journey, a self-paced journey to use their product, but we implemented an in-product chat. So where people were dropping off, we could help them get their questions answered and keep them moving through that journey. So that's a great solution for a person or an AI bot to help out there. Webinars, email campaigns, office hours. So there's a lot of solutions, and if you need some ideas, just reach out. And of course, no talk today is complete without talking about AI. And when we look at that trough of disillusionment earlier in today's session, that's where we are with AI. There's all this hype, there's all the promise, right? Everyone's running because they feel like they should be using AI, they should be adding AI to their product. But we have the promise, but haven't really received the value yet, right? So we're kind of in that trough of disillusionment, trying to figure out how to use AI. So if you're delivering AI, you must deliver value to your customers as quickly as possible. If you're using AI, then there's a huge opportunity to explore how to get the most impact from it. And this study that I read just this week said that about 70% of companies are using AI very tactically. Maybe for meeting summaries, and you guys using it for meeting summaries, maybe a little bit of research. There's huge opportunities to continue growing with AI to really make it transformational. So here's an AI transformation journey. Just like we talked about with your customers need to have a maturity journey, you can have a maturity journey with AI where you start slow by crawling, that's summaries and research. And then you can start walking, maybe removing repetitive work. I mean, one thing that you can do this week is to write down for yourself, what are the things that you do over and over and over that kind of suck the energy out of your day or week or month? And start exploring, are there ways to leverage technology and AI to remove that? Find out from your team, what are the things they're doing over and over? Do they do this report? I mean, I worked at companies where they would do a report every Friday. It took 3 hours, right? How can you leverage AI and technology to take that away? That's a great way to start to scale. Oops, sorry, let me go back here. Then orchestrate. We need to unify the customer journey. We need to get teams working together. So for example, when you're moving from the sales rep to the customer-facing teams, they need to be able to know everything that the sales reps know so that they're not asking the customers the exact same questions. So you could start using it to unify and pool all that data together and then start to grow with technology, with predictive insights, dashboards. You know, we talk a lot about return on investment. What if every tool could demonstrate to the customer right in the product the percentage of return on their investment that they've received in a month, in a year, in 2 years? That's what I would like to see. So here's some ways you can leverage AI. We're not quite there yet. I work a lot with onboarding. In the future, there may be bot-to-bot onboarding, right? So my bot works with your bot to get the data set up, to do the migrating, the connecting, the integrating. And they're just, people are managing the bots on the inside. But we're not there yet. But you can also look at coaching co-pilots, like Microsoft's doing that with Copilot. You can have continuous learning. So rather than dumping everything about your product on a user all at the same time, can you give them like kind of this curated journey, like little breadcrumbs along the way that lead them to their goals? If they log in and the AI knows exactly who they are and what kind of goals they're trying to accomplish, that's a place that we can get to. And predictive outreach and those ROI dashboards I was talking about. But you know what? We often look at, we got to create this digital journey, and it's going to take a long time, probably 18 months and hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of AIs. So how can we get there sooner? And I'd like to start with looking at a hybrid approach, where you deliver a high-touch moment in a digital journey so that you're getting people that touch that they need that's really going to deliver the value. Or maybe you're going to deliver in a high-touch journey some digital moments. So some self-paced content, some in-product guidance. And it's really important just to start exploring where we can start kind of delivering some digital moments. And the key here is experimenting. Have a question, have an idea, try it out. Because it's going to take a while to build that whole AI tech stack that really makes a difference. And what I'm seeing is that people are ultra sensitive about bots right now. So they still want that human touch. But you need to know, when does that human touch make the most difference, right? And when can you move to a more digital and AI approach? So this is a great quote from Isidore Sharp, the founder of the Four Seasons, who said, "Systemize the predictable so you can humanize the exponential." Because guess what? We're not here to get rid of people. People want an in-person, a person-to-person contact more than ever. But this is a way to amplify and elevate the human experience rather than having your teams do these repetitive tasks that don't really add value. Okay, so here's the value at scale recap. The gaps are, if you're delivering this one-to-one, then you really need to look at ways to scale. If your teams are burnt out, if your customers are frustrated, if your margins are eroding. And then the bridges are a one-to-many approach, and also AI. And then key metrics are margins, NRR, and employee retention. If your employees are not feeling challenged and rewarded and they're doing really boring, repetitive work, then it's time to leverage that. And of course, the CRM is a key tool. Okay, So we're going to dive into the takeaways and next steps. Customer value is everyone's responsibility. And, you know, VJ and I were talking earlier today about, well, there's the kind of pre-sales teams and the post-sales teams. But really, it doesn't matter. It's everyone's responsibility to not just, give a promise, but to deliver on that promise. And a customer-centric approach, cross-functional alignments, and integrated systems are critical. Now, there's this famous quote from Steve Jobs who said, you've got to start with the customer experience and work backwards from the technology to the technology. You can't start with the technology and then try to figure out where you're going to sell it. And after working with hundreds of companies from all around the world, I like to say the same thing about the customer experience. You can't start with siloed teams and try to cobble something together for the customer. You need to start with the customer, and I'll collaborate to make sure that happens. And I have some data here from that study that I just looked at. And what they said was that stronger tech stacks correlate with stronger NRR. And that when companies use CRMs, they have a 98.5% NRR versus 90% for companies who don't use a CRM. And for a learning management system, it's 99% versus 95%. And for support systems, it's 99% versus 93%. So it's about integrating your systems, because that's going to really help you scale and grow as well. So if your company is serious about growth, then it's time to get serious about the value gap and closing the value gap. And I just want to take a moment here to let you know I have a course coming, a self-paced, live, on-demand course called Mastering Customer Onboarding, and it goes into all of the details about the orchestrated onboarding experience I cover in my book. It will be in English, and that's coming soon. And I'm going to give you a QR code here, and you can give me some feedback about today's talk, but I'll also add you to the wait list, and you can get a discount code for the course when it releases in about a month. We're going to scoot here. We're going to have you share with each other again. I'm going to have you share with your neighbor, pick one value gap that you are going to close this quarter before the end of this year. Are you going to look at initial value? Are you going to look at lifetime value? Are you going to look at scaling value? So I want you to identify one area that you want to address and share what's your biggest opportunity and why, and maybe how you're going to address that. So I'm going to give you, about 3 minutes to do that. So pick your gap and share with your partner. Okay, wrap up. Okay, thank you. So if you're like me, I remember things when I write them down. So if you got some good ideas, let's look into some takeaways in a moment. You can write them down. But I love this. I just heard about this one. Cross-functional alignment is not a special event. It's a daily occurrence. All right, so here's your key takeaways and next steps. You want to close the gaps from the value promised to the value delivery, and you can look at it from promise to profit. You need to deliver some initial value with quick wins, and if you want some ideas for brainstorming quick wins, reach out. That's something that I help companies with. Then provide lifetime value with a value journey, and you scale value delivery with a one-to-many approach, and then start experimenting with AI. You know, you can start with just a handful of customers and try something out, but you need to know like your control group and your baseline metrics so that you really know the impact. And I would love for you to reach out to me, let me know what's working. And if there's some ahas or ideas or things you want to implement in the next week or month or by the end of the year, write them down, try them out, and let me know how they work. So thank you so much for being here today.